Hello, my name is Bradley Myers, and I am a graduate student at Grand Canyon University. Today, I will be presenting my cultural background and experiences as they relate to the field of counseling. First and foremost, I would like to discuss my culture. Growing up as a white American, I was raised in traditional American contexts. My household consisted of the stereotypical nuclear family, with two parents and two children. My family was relatively individualist, and we're focused on our individual success rather than society at large. Being much of the males in my family were working class professions such as construction and carpentry, my family valued work ethic above all else. In fact, my father used to state, "Hard work succeeds when talent fails to work hard." For me, this instilled the importance of perseverance towards one's goals, even in dire circumstances. But more importantly, it formed the manner in which I navigate the world. Within this realm, there were specific parameters set by the communication styles of my culture. As argued by Liu 2018 and Su and others 2022, individualistic cultures tend to be more direct in their approach to communication, especially in terms of conflict management and nonverbal cues such as eye contact. My family was no exception to the standard. Both verbally and nonverbally, my family were direct with their intentions and valued honesty above all else. Furthermore, my family also personally valued concepts of individual privacy. Oftentimes, my family would focus more on the successes of itself and its family members rather than others. According to Bien and others, 2022, American individualism tends to value personal freedoms and achievements and attribute social standing to these concepts. From this standpoint, my culture expected each successive generation to strive for more than the last. In some regards, this connection of personal freedom and achievements to social status is beneficial. Hershock, 2019, explains that the modern philosophical American conceptualization of individual freedoms to be free to choose any identity as an individual. With my cultural values, I was permitted to choose to be whatever I wanted to in my life. While there were expectations set for my success, I was given the ability to decide how I might achieve this. Tangentially, Wang and Liu 2022 argue self-compassion to be more strongly correlated with life satisfaction in individualistic cultures. In my experience, this was related to the prioritization of individual needs. Essentially, my culture enabled me to take care of myself when needed. However, in some respects, I would argue that the strict individualism of my culture can leave room for improvement. Liu 2018 discusses how the directness of Western cultures can pose difficulties in communicating with foreign cultures. Sharing this sentiment, I feel while certain direct communication can be effective, there is a certain sensitivity necessary for effective dialogue. I further believe this consideration extends to my culture's responses to crises as well. Bian and others, 2022, page 384, assert individualistic cultures to be less likely to engage in socially optimal actions when faced with crises. Arguably, the priority of the individual over the needs of the group can be detrimental on a societal level. As expressed by Butrick and Oishi 2022 or 2021, the mobility of choice, especially in terms of living, can affect the potential depth for a person's social network. In this sense, rugged individualism alone can act in opposition to the social needs of a person. To improve upon these values, I contend the necessity of compromising between the needs of the individual and the needs of the group. Many of the stereotypes held about my culture pertain to this social orientation of individualism. Liu 2018 cites how communication styles can affect perceptions of politeness between Eastern and Western cultures. Ostensibly, the difference in communication styles between cultures can lead to my culture being stereotyped as being rude or disrespectful. The prioritization of the individual's right to opinion over group consensus can thus lead to my cultural values being perceived as selfish. Relative to this concept, the individual freedoms of my culture creates a conceptualization of advantageousness. Bickman 2022 relays how historically disadvantageous social positions for African and Latinx Americans can lead to stereotyping white Americans as possessing more agency and less communion. Though there can be variability in the exact values of white Americans, it is not uncommon for outgroups to stereotype an unlimited freedom of choice because of the historical advantages of our culture. Stereotypes also exist within my culture, both equally towards itself and other cultures. Sirksma and others, 2022, deduce white American children to be more likely to stereotype racial outgroups to be less American than racial ingroups. Largely, because of the individual nature of my culture, there are some individuals who may stereotype collectivist values to be un-American. Adding to the complexity of these perceptions, those contributing to stereotypes towards outgroups can contribute to feelings of guilt or fear within my culture. Sue and others, 2022, allege this to be a fear of being accused of racism or blamed for oppression. From this notion, I believe the individuality of my culture contributes to the awareness of differences between groups. In optimal circumstances, this can lead to patience and understanding of others, but on other occasions, this can lead to pervasive negative stereotypes about different groups. On a relatively similar scale, the perspectives my culture has about substance use can be multifaceted. Because of the themes of individualism in my culture, many of the views regarding the topic center around personal responsibility. Santoro and Santoro 2018 cite media portrayals of criminality for substance use and legal action taken against abuses to contribute to the moralistic implications for this issue. For many white Americans, substance use with illicit substances was thus associated with immorality and irresponsible behavior. Anecdotally, however, this differed within my family. On a personal level, several of my family members have or continue to struggle with alcoholism. Due to the deep connections my family has with substance use, many of our personal cultural perspectives regarding the issue view it as complicated with no simple solution. Yet, with the cultural perceptions of counseling, my culture values the process of counseling to be an individual responsibility. Ingold 2021 illustrates Western psychology to assume the individual to be responsible for all aspects of the self. Though there may be external factors influencing the mental health of a person, it is often considered to be the responsibility of each person to improve their circumstances. I believe this to be demonstrative of social interests of individualistic cultures. As iterated before by Bien and others 2022, individualism can affect the likelihood of a person seeking out the best course of action on a societal level. While my culture values the ability of everyone to improve, this value also creates an expectation for each person to resolve any difficulties on their own. Considering my cultural background, it is apparent counseling someone within my culture could be a less difficult task since I would be able to understand the client's perspective more easily. Nevertheless, I believe the sheer variability of the human experience constitutes a certain sense of caution when approaching each case. The Grand Canyon University 2022 disposition of self-awareness requires counselors to understand how their values influence their personal and professional relationships. Elaborating on this value, while I may connect with clients from within my culture, I must be aware of how my personal values interact with my client. Assuming a universal reality, even for clients of similar backgrounds of my own, can be detrimental at best and unethical at worst. In contrast, my counseling abilities would be most affected for those outside of my culture. Sue and others, 2022, relay the risk of the individualistic nature of therapeutic strategies in opposing the group context of other cultures and leading to misinterpretation of symptoms within these clients. Fundamentally, my ability to connect with these clients may be limited and would be controlled by my ability to adapt. The Grand Canyon 2022 dispositional values of cultural diversity and flexibility constitute a need for counselors to work within the unique cultural context of clients while being open to different perspectives or change. Counseling those outside of my culture therefore requires an additional exhibition of caution. Sue and others, 2022, further elaborate by stating cultural competence to require counselors to understand the historical factors contributing to the experiences of marginalized clients. For these clients, it is therefore my professional obligation to educate myself on historical inequalities when necessary. Though I may not immediately understand my client's perspective, it is my responsibility to attempt to do so. On this page, you'll find many of the sources that I have referenced throughout the presentation. At this time, I would like to thank you for listening, and I appreciate you for being a wonderful audience.